everyone. Welcome to another 30-Minute Thursday, and we're delighted to be with all of you who've decided to join with us today. And my name is Mike Sears. I'm the founder and president of Sears Wealth Management and Insurance Solutions. And with me today is Seth Morris, our advisor, my dear friend, and glad to have you with us, Seth.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I'm glad to be here, and welcome to everyone who's joining with us today. We hope that you're able to take a few notes today and take something that you can apply in your personal life. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat feature. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can. And as always, we will have a raffle winner today, so stay till the end, and who knows, it may be you.
That's great. Well, our topic today is actually a very timely one, Seth. And I think a very important topic because every person on this call is probably feeling the pinches of inflation. And of course, if you're in retirement, you're actually feeling it probably as well, maybe even a little bit more if you're on a fixed income. And so today our topic is inflation and your retirement. And of course, who is to know that yesterday we had an announcement that was made from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, and he made some comments on monetary policy, which actually feeds right into our topic today, Seth.
Yeah, he must have known what we were going to talk about. Maybe he follows us on YouTube.
I hope he is.
I doubt it.
Maybe he learns a few things.
Maybe. Well, Mike, like you said, today we're talking about inflation. I think a good place to start would be is to define exactly what is inflation for our listeners. So, Mike, what is inflation?
Well, there's a lot of good definitions, but I tried to come up with a definition that I think is meaningful to us. And I think inflation really is the reduced purchasing power of our money, which means that with the same dollars in my hand, I can't purchase the same amount of goods and services that I could previously. And so maybe a good example, we go to fill up the car, and let's just say in the past it cost us, say, $45, Seth, to gas up the car, to fill it up. But now I go to the gas station and it costs me $60, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I've got to come up with that extra $15 from someplace, or maybe I even have to reduce my driving.
Or start using a bicycle, right?
Yeah, that's right. Of course, I have a hybrid, so I'm trying to pinch a penny there,
I'm jealous. I know you go to the gas station, less than I do. I heard a joke the other day. Someone says, I want to be as wealthy as the guy at the gas station that is staring off in the distance as his gas pumps behind him. The rest of us, we're watching those numbers go up, frantically. Yeah, we've all seen the effects of inflation because it affects every product and service in our life typically.
Yeah, it really does.
Mm-hmm. And I think, this idea, just some numbers that I have here, for example, let's say a person needing $5,000 a month to live on. Well, in 10 years, you'd need $6,095 a month. Or in 20 years, you'd need $7,429 a month to create that same standard of living. And that is only at 2% inflation. Nothing like the 7% inflation that we saw this last year.
Maybe going back to what you just said, the impact that would have to maintain the same purchasing power, saying I need 5,000 and now we need to come up with, 6,000 or, 20 years later, $7,000 a month. That can play a huge impact on our standard of living, I think. Mm-hmm. And, some people have called this inflation, they've called it a stealth tax because isn't reducing the purchasing power of our money really a tax, isn't it? Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, it definitely is.
And in some regards, Seth, inflation is worse than income taxes. Income taxes probably impact 15 to 20, 25% of Americans, but inflation impacts all Americans, every walk of life. If you've got to purchase goods and services and it costs more, everyone is affected by that.
We're all feeling the pinch of inflation, and so Mike, you mentioned that we'd be interested to know what Jerome Powell said the other day about inflation. Could you give us a quick summary about what his discussion was?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's important to understand, the Fed really does have two main jobs, right? One is to keep inflation under control, which is exactly what we're dealing with right now. And the other is to, reduce unemployment, if that's possible. And so those are the two key things that they have a responsibility to do. I'm sure they have other things, but those are their two main responsibilities. So if I could highlight maybe the key takeaways that I got, these aren't exact quotes, but these are some of the key takeaways that I took as I did some research on what Chairman Powell had to say. And here's the first one. He said, there's a risk that inflation will not decline back towards its pre-pandemic levels anytime soon, and that a rise in prices could actually accelerate.
What do you mean it won't decline back? I thought everyone's been telling us that inflation was transitory, Mike.
Yeah, well, think about the last number of months. We've even talked about this in some of our other 30-Minute Thursdays. People thinking that this increases in prices, increases at the gas pump, increases what you're feeling, at the grocery store was just a temporary situation that we would deal with because of the pandemic. But they're not saying that. In fact, the second point that I took away from what he said there's a risk that high inflation we are seeing will be prolonged and that it will move even higher. That doesn't sound transitory to me.
No, not at all.
Third point, the Federal Reserve can raise interest rates without hurting the recovery of the labor market because currently job openings outnumber unemployed Americans. Those of you who are on the call, think about this. When you're driving around town and you see the businesses, are you seeing what I'm seeing? In a lot of the storefronts or in the windows, it says, now hiring. We have a business that's close to our office here, and it says, you will be hired same day if you apply. I think you saw some other things that were really amazing.
Yeah, I think there was I think it was like a fast food restaurant. I was driving by on the way to work. They had a big billboard outside. It says sign-on bonus $1,000 or something like that, and starting 21 an hour. I think, a lot of these businesses are getting so desperate. I might just have to take on a second job, Mike.
Well, I'll tell you, I would like the sign-on bonus, but, if I could get some of the free fast food, if they threw that in there as one of the bonuses, I think I might be interested.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Why don't you take this fourth point, because I think this is really worth noting.
Yeah, so one of the other things from his discussion was he says the economy no longer needs sustained high levels of monetary policy support. And that's why they're going to be phasing out their asset purchases. And so for everyone on the call, phasing out asset purchases means they're going to essentially stop putting more money or start to ease how much money they're putting into the economy. And money supply in the economy is what will help rise inflation. So when we have these high levels of inflation, they start to ease their purchases, which hopefully should reduce the inflation. That's the goal there. And he also says, they expect that there will be an appropriate raise in the federal funds rate. And the federal funds rate is the rate at which the banks borrow money, which in turn affects the rate at which they loan out money to us as consumers. And when the interest rates go up, what's supposed to happen? Well, inflation is supposed to come down a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think everyone was listening to see if he was going to announce that interest rates were going to go up, yesterday. Mm-hmm. Instead, he signaled that interest rate hikes will probably be coming forth in March of this year. That's what he said.
Mm-hmm. So I know we just discussed that a little bit, that when they raise the rates, it should lower inflation. But Mike, what other effects does that have on the economy when they raise the interest rates?
Well, if interest rates increase, that's likely going to slow down business activity. While this may help reduce inflation, it may also lower economic growth in our country. That's possible. That's one way to slow things down. Higher rates also tend to make borrowing more expensive for consumers and businesses. And of course, if rates go up, that will reduce the number of loans, possibly, that might take place. And again, that thus slowing the economy with the intent to reduce inflation. And I think, look at what's happened with, especially in California, but really throughout the country. Think about the housing market. We have seen, I just can't even believe it. Our home probably went up another $150,000, the value of our home. Amazing. And I think one of the reasons for that is the fact that rates are so low, people could afford the monthly payment. And so if those rates go up, mortgage rates go up, those payments go up, that's probably going to slow somewhat the housing market as well. Potentially. We don't know for sure. But.
Yeah, no, those low rates have been very enticing, and maybe a few of us got a little over leveraged on the homes we bought as well. Now, Mike, we're talking about inflation. We're talking about the Fed, and what their jobs are is keep inflation under control and reduce unemployment. Well, I'm sure a lot of us are thinking that the Fed could use some on-the-job training because it doesn't look like they're doing such a good job. But regardless of what the government does, regardless of their fiscal policies and their monetary policies, what can our listeners, because I think they'd be interested to know, what can we do to combat inflation in our own lives, regardless of what's happening around us?
Great question, because there are some things that we can control and there's a lot of things that we can't control. So I think what you're asking me, what are the things that here we are trying to run our families, we're either in retirement or we're planning for retirement. What are the things that we can personally do with high rates of inflation that are coming our way? And I think maybe as a precursor to that, the government debt that's being incurred right now is astronomical. And if we continue on the same fiscal path that we're on right now, that does not serve us well at all. And not only are we in the highest debt that this country has ever been in, but personal families are in more debt than in any other time in history as well. And so anytime, Seth, that there is debt, that is the signal for planning. That is the time for sitting down and trying to figure out, how am I going to fix this, right? So, and of course, we want to spend our time working on the things that we can control. So, I guess the first question is, and I think everyone will know the answer to this, so let me ask you, Seth, can you and I control inflation?
No, I don't believe so.
I mean, you don't have a magic wand that can just come on.
I wish I did.
I wish you could. But we can't control inflation, right? So I think as we talk about planning for the future, the first area that we want to focus on is spending. You want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, you talked about, we can't control inflation. Well, we should be able to control our spending. And I think it's a good time for everyone, if you have a budget, to get it out and look at it and look back over the last few months and see where you need to make adjustments, because I'm sure everyone looking at their budget will see that they've been overspending or spending over that budget, just purchasing basic necessities that we need every day. And if you don't have a budget, now's a good time to make one. And I think there's a couple ways to make a budget. There's good ways and bad ways. One would be to jot down all your expenses over the last few months and say, well, that's what we spend. That's our budget. That's not going to work. Mike, you have a very A good way to create a budget. I'm sure many of us have seen that before. Would you mind sharing that with us?
I feel like such a broken record.
That's okay. Repetition is good.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, it really comes down to, and how many times have I said this to our listeners? It's getting in alignment the income that you have, the amount of income that you have. Obviously, we all want more, but getting in alignment with the income that's coming to you month by month with your spending. If you have $5,000 a month that's coming in, and you spend $5,200, guess what happens? You just created some debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so the real question is, will you get in alignment? Will we have the courage to look at our spending patterns each month and getting them in alignment with what we have coming in income, and also making sure that the first line item on your budget is paying yourself, saving a little bit every single month for a rainy day. I mean, we've been talking about inflation. Imagine if you put $300 a month away because you've got in alignment your spending and your income, and you just put that away for a rainy day. And then as things cost more or something comes up, you're ready. You can do it. You've got the cash. And so that's something that every person can do. And my guess is we're not talking about being so tight that you can't do anything, but it may mean that you have to make some tough decisions to realign the way you spend your money so that you're not overspending. And putting money away for a rainy day is a big part of that equation.
Mm-hmm. And I think, just to add, I think that's as important for people that are approaching retirement or in their working years as it is for people who are in retirement. And someone in retirement could look and say, you know what, things are costing more, but I have these reserves, and so I'm going to spend more. Not always the case. And so we need to look at your budget, we need to look at your spending, and we can project out future values, and we can say, okay, we can keep up with that, or we can't keep up with that level of spending, and maybe we need to make some adjustments. And so it's important for everyone in all times of your life. You need to create that budget and watch your spending and control how we spend our money.
I think it's foundational, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what's the next area, Mike, that we can look at or that we can take control and help combat inflation in our lives?
I'll answer the question. I'll answer that with a question. And to our viewers, here's the second area. Do you have a financial plan that is designed specifically to help keep up with inflation? I'll say it again. Do you have a financial plan in place that is designed specifically to help plan for inflation? What that means is, do you have a financial plan that is planning to increase income in your plan to help keep up with higher costs over time? And, we've been doing this for so many years. And I get so excited, Seth, when someone walks in and they say, my financial advisor created this financial plan. Would you look it over and see what you think? But instead, we don't see that too often. In fact, it's rare that anyone comes in with any type of plan. In most cases, people have money, they have saved, they have invested over time, but there's no plan. And so, as we've said on many occasions, that we're not really retired if we don't have adequate income. But when we're talking about inflation, where our purchasing power is reduced because costs of goods and services are increasing, we have to have a plan designed that will keep up with rising costs. And we were talking about this today. I think I should say this, Seth, because most people don't even know that this exists. And I remember saying to you, wouldn't it be amazing if you could create a plan in such a way that could keep up with inflation over the period of your life, even if you spent down the principal money to zero, that the income would increase. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I think most people, when you hear this, you think, oh, come on, how could that's possible? That there are plans and products that are in place today that have been in place for tens of years, 10, 20 years, that actually will allow you to create income that will be paid to you for as long as you live, and if you're married, for as long as your spouse lives. And even if the principal amount of the money reduced to zero, you would still have an income stream that would pay you for the rest of your life. And I can't think of anything that would be more stressful to a person to be living, think of longevity. Someone's living late into their 80s and they see their asset values decreasing, but knowing that when those asset values reduce to zero, the income stops. You want to talk about stress? So when we're talking about having a plan, we're talking about having a balanced plan. And I know you've talked to me many times about the investment side of this equation that goes with it and the balance that needs to be there. You want to chat about that?
Yeah, just briefly, so we have financial planning, and a big part of that is investing. And I'm sure many of our viewers want this, what's the answer? What is this? What should I be invested in? What can help me hedge against inflation? Now, we don't give investment advice on these calls, but having a diversified portfolio that can weather all types of storms and hedge against inflation is very crucial. And if you're interested in knowing more about that or knowing how your portfolio will hedge against inflation, please give us a call. We'd love to be able to chat about that with you personally.
Good advice. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You want to head us off into this last area? I think that's important.
Yeah. So, we were talking about inflation today, and one of the things that we can, we're going to talk about some ideas or things that we can do to help control our taxes. And you may say, okay, well, why are we talking about taxes? Well, inflation is the result of, all this excess spending or money in the economy, right? Which comes from the government spending and stimuluses and things like this. Well, taxes tends to be the byproduct of excessive spending, right, Mike?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about, in fact, you can go to the U.S. debt clock that projects, in fact, it's in real time, and it shows you, how the government's debt is increasing every minute, of every day. And the projections on there are just astronomical, the amount of debt. So if the government has debt, the next question that all of us should be asking ourselves is, where is the government going to get the money to pay that debt? And the answer is, he's going to get it. The government's going to get it from those that have the money. And it's in the form of what?
Taxes.
It's in the form of taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the question that those of you who are listening today, I'm not here to tell you what the future is going to hold, but let me ask you this question. Do you think that taxes are going to increase in the future? Is that a possibility? And if in fact taxes do increase in the future, will it not erode your purchasing power in retirement, just like inflation?
Well, it definitely will. There will be less money to go around.
Exactly. That's exactly right. We've talked about this in previous meetings, and if I were to take the time to write on the board, we could write 3 columns, right, of the way people have their money invested. We have taxable accounts, right, would be probably on the left. We have tax-deferred accounts, which is where most of the money is in the United States, which for the most part is retirement accounts. It's all tax-deferred, and when the money comes out, it's all taxable. And then, of course, on the far right-hand side is tax-free or partially tax-free. And there's not a lot of assets in that tax-free column. But Seth, if we were to ask most people where would they like to be positioned, what do you think most people would say?
Well, I think we'd all love to have all of our money in tax-free accounts.
All of us would, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but for most of us in our working years, we haven't invested our money in that way. We've invested our money in accounts where we get a 401k or an IRA or a 403b or a tax-sheltered annuity, and we got a little tax break for the money, the contribution going in, and that seems nice at the time. And for some people that maybe even be meaningful. But the trade-off for that that tax break that you got up front for making a $6,000 contribution or a $20,000 contribution pales in comparison to the fact that over your lifetime, 20 or maybe even 30 years of taxable withdrawals. And of course, if the government, with all the spending they've done, continues to increase the taxes on that money, the amount of money in taxes that we would end up paying could be enormous. In fact, Seth, I think I was telling you today, I did a little study this morning, and I wanted to find out what the average American was paying in taxes over their lifetime. And the average was $525,000 in taxes. That's unbelievable. And then they broke it out, and they said that roughly $340,000 comes from taxes on earnings, right? Taxable money, W-2 earnings, etc., and the rest come from sales taxes, property taxes, car taxes, etc. And then, of course, where you live by state could also determine whether or not you paid more. In fact, people in New Jersey had the highest total taxes over their lifetime, $931,000, as opposed to someone living in West Virginia, the lease was $321,000. I don't know. Maybe we're moving this next week. I don't know.
You can go to West Virginia.
Yeah, actually, I have a son that's in West Virginia. Hello there, Robert. And so, but you get the idea that. So the question is that we ask ourselves is if we could employ a strategy that would help us reduce that we could pay taxes by moving money from money that's in taxable accounts today to tax-free accounts. And if those tax rates are less than what we project those taxes could be in the future, would that be a benefit? And the answer could be maybe. And of course, that takes some planning to determine, what the differences would be. But that really is a very major strategy. And anytime you hear the word Roth, we're talking about tax-free. We talk about life insurance. People think life insurance? Well, life insurance is one of the last assets in the tax code that has tax-free death benefits and tax advantage benefits on cash values, which you can't get in other places. So there could be another place. Municipal bonds is tax-free in some cases. So there are places that we can consider. And the most important thing is to put you and me in control of the taxes we pay instead of having the government be in control. So this is another method that we could use to keep more of the money that we work so hard to keep each year.
Yeah, no, I think that'd definitely be beneficial. Well, we're kind of coming towards the end of our 30 minutes here. I just wanted to share a couple of these. We had asked some of our clients and people that watch these videos to send in responses. We asked them, how much was your first car? Just so we could see how inflation has worked throughout our lives. And here's some of the responses. Dana says, my first car in 1977 was $8,000. I like this one. Luann says, I remember John's brand new 1974 El Camino cost just under $5,000. I think back to those times and how sweet it'd be, but it's all relative to the times we're living in. I remember my first car cost $450, but that was just a clunker, and it wasn't so many years ago. But we want to thank everyone for your responses, and we do appreciate the comments and the questions that we get. And thank you, everyone, for watching with us today. We do have a raffle winner. The winner is Jerry F., and our office will be in contact with you. Also, our next 30-minute Thursday is scheduled for January 27th. We're going to be discussing, or the topic is, should I pay off my mortgage or should I save for my retirement? And so stay tuned for that. Join us on January 27th. And Mike, I'll leave the time to you to finish us off today.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. This is very meaningful to us as a company, as we every 2 weeks get a chance to meet with you. And we hope that the little bit of time that we spend is helpful to you as you plan your future. And we hope that this is helpful, not only just financially. If your financial life is good, that's great. But every other area of your life is usually improved when you've got a good foundation. So God bless each of you. Have a wonderful day today and the upcoming weekend. And we look forward to seeing you again on January 27th. Take care. Nice to be with all of you today.